Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the intelligent, but rather the most adaptable to change. Leon Megginson. Every creature adapts to its habitat so that it can learn, grow, and mature. The creature that fails to adapt reduces its chance of survival. And so it is with every one of you who are seated here today, if we fail to adapt. How many of you would agree that we're living in changing times where the world is rapidly changing all around us? We're going through changes all the time. Changes that we incur by ourselves or changes that are imposed on us, but we go through changes. You remember, those of you who are young enough, or I should say old enough, living in the 1970s and 80s, and the styles there. Remember the times when people would wear certain clothing, dress a certain way. Imagine living in the 21st century with 1970s and 80s clothing. Imagine having a mentality of the 70s and 80s while you're living in the 21st century. How many of you would want to live life that way? I'm not sure any of you would, and neither would I. What has happened since then is that things are turning very rapidly, rapid changes. I remember that part of my life growing up was in the early 70s, the disco era, where the big afros and the flare bottom pants. You thought you were cool then. I mean, you were it. Imagine wear those things today in the 21st century. As a matter of fact, it seems like almost anything goes these days. So maybe you might have fitted in just fine. But the thing is that what you don't want to get stuck in is living today with yesterday's thoughts facing your tomorrow. You've got to adapt. With the introduction of the internet, there has been a rapid or increasingly change all around us as we are constantly being exposed to different ways to communicate. How many of you have never used the internet? We have learned to adapt, but maybe if you recollect when you first was introduced to the internet and you were, like some people were scared, afraid to break it. It's as if I did something, it will explode. Something will go wrong. And I can't fix it. What do I do now? Call the expert. There you go. I guess you would then. But because of these changes, we've adapted ourselves so we can survive. We have learned, we have grown, and we have matured because these changes have come into our lives. But there's some changes that come into our lives that we don't necessarily ask for. How many of you were asked to give your consent for Hollywood Boulevard to be torn up and some parts of the road blocked off? How many of you were asked to give your approval? No one was asked. But yet, they did it without our consent. But what we had to do, because we want to get to Toastmasters, is adapt. We've learned to get around it. Why? Because we had to get to Toastmasters, or if we had to get to our jobs or to our families, we made the necessary changes. Why? So that we can It's all about survival. And if we are going to become what it is we were created to be, we've got to make those adaptations by changing the way we think about life. One of the reasons you've joined Toastmasters is that there's something about Toastmasters that tells you that if you only apply yourself and take the routes that Toastmasters give you, you become a more qualified speaker, more confident. You become the kind of person that you dream of becoming. And Toastmasters says, if you stay with us, we'll make you that person. And that's why you're here. And that's why I am here. So we can come more confident, stronger, better speakers, more persuasive, more inspirational in what we do. Eric Hoffer says this: in times of change, the learner shall inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And you don't want to find yourself living in that kind of world. This is my challenge to you today as a Hollywood Toastmaster. We're making some changes that may not necessarily fit the way we have always done things. But we are endeavoring to make sure that all our members accomplish the goals of being a Toastmaster, and to do that requires that we continue to change, to grow, and to mature. James Lewis says this: if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. Toastmasters has a vision. The vision says this: to empower people to achieve their full potential and realize their dreams. Through our member clubs, people throughout the world can improve their communication and leadership skills and find the courage to change. We want this club to be a club of excellence. We want visitors who are looking for a club to join, which come and say, I don't need to go to another club. This is it. We want those who have come to see what we do because they have heard about us, and when they come, they should say the half has not been told. How do we do that? We do it together. But it takes some risk. To laugh is the risk appearing a fool. To weep is the risk appearing sentimental. To expose our feelings is the risk revealing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is the risk rejection. To love is the risk not being loved in return. To live is the risk dying. To hope is the risk disappointment. To try is the risk failure. But risks must be taken, because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. Those who risk nothing, do nothing, have nothing, and become nothing. They may avoid present suffering, but they will not learn, change, or grow, and become all they want to be. Gerald Lynch says this: when you believe and think you can, you activate your motivation, your commitment, your confidence, your concentration, and excitement, all of which relate directly to achievement. Fellow Toastmasters, you don't have to be great to start, but you must start to be great. I'm Toastmaster.